welcome to Crafty Chat. My name is Nancy, and I'm back with Heidi and Lucy again for episode 4 of our Crafty Chat. Today we're going to be talking about two main things. We're going to be talking about some of our crafting goals and some crafting disasters that we've had and things that have gone wrong. But before we get started into those topics, what are you guys working on this week?
I've been doing the same sweater that I was working on, slowly making progress. And then all this talk about crafting has made me sort of go back and look at things I used to do, but I haven't been doing as much. So I pulled out an old needlepoint project thinking like, oh, I'm not going to be interested in this. And now I'm pretty into it again. So that's kind of exciting. I'm not sure what I would do with it. I think that's part of the thing with needlepoint. Like once you finish it, you're just like, I don't want a pillow. I don't want to, so we'll see. It's been fun though.
Cool. There's only so many, with needlepoint stuff, I always feel like I have to frame it. And then there's this point of like, there's only so much wall space that I have for framed artworks.
Yeah.
And stuff. So like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this at the end of when I'm finished with it. But
yeah, that's kind of how I feel. But the process right now is enjoyable. So I'll go with that.
Yeah, that's with our episode last week where we were talking about crafting nostalgia. I did the same thing. I went through my sewing box, my hand sewing box, and pulled out a bunch of stuff that I hadn't worked on in years. And cross stitch was one of the things that I pulled out. And I've said for years, and Heidi and I have talked about this several times, I for a long time hated cross stitch. It was something about the repetitiveness. I love the way it looks. It's beautiful, and I love the finished piece, but working on it through the process was always really hard for me. But I pulled out a small cross-stitch project that I hadn't started working on it, and I can't stop. It's just, I just want to work on that. That's all I want to do. It's got to be something with me of like, because I'm working on other things and problem solving for other projects, I need a project that's calm and repetitive and kind of meditative in a way. So that this particular cross-stitch project is filling that space for me in my basket. But so I'm working on that, and then I haven't touched the tote bag at all. I'm dreading trying to put those pockets in the bag, so I haven't touched that at all. But I deviated off of my projects that I need to get done and decided that I needed a new book for all of my hand sewing needles. So I covered a just old book cover with fabric, and then I'm going to sew felt pages onto the inside of it so that I can then put the needles in on the felt pages. So that's the the glue just dried on this yesterday, so I'm ready to start sewing the pages in. So I'll be able to show.
What kind of glue do you use?
So for the outside, I use spray adhesive, and then for the inside, to glue this piece on, I used Fabric Bond, I think, Fabry Bond. It's an Eileen's glue. So it's the same company that does tacky glue. I used to make these for years as journals. So I would put elastics in the spine instead of sewing pages in, and you could, I would make these little booklets that were single signature booklets that you could slide in and out, kind of like a traveler's notebook. I haven't done it in like 3 or 4 years, so it's kind of a memory refresh skill for me, again along the nostalgia path of like, I'm gonna try this again, see if it works. And it was really fun.
I should make one of those. I need a needle book instead of like keeping everything in a Tupperware container for my, I have all my book packs and needles, because I keep you replace them, so you keep buying like another multi-pack, and then I find I have like 5 of these. Okay.
No, go ahead.
And you only need I only need like 2 of the needles or something, So again, I didn't do much this week because I worked on that giant pink scarf, so I did make some headway on that. I was inspired on Monday. I was like going and going, and I'm like, I might even finish this by the end of the week. Well, I haven't touched it since Monday because I was busy. I filmed like 3 or 4 different videos for AADL TV. So those take some time, and then just plotting and planning some other programs. I also did make a t-shirt mask, like a no-sew t-shirt mask.
Oh yeah,
cool.
I did one of those, and I made one for my husband too. So just a real simple, Just want to try it out.
See it again? Huh? Can you hold that up again?
Sure. I can link to the video that inspired me to do it.
Yeah. So. Yeah, send me that. My mom came to me 2 weeks ago and was asking for fabric masks. I found the ones that are contour.
Oh yeah.
And then they have
Oh,
a
yeah.
zipper pocket on the inside. And then I sewed a channel on the inside to put a piece of wire. And I'm just using pipe cleaners to form the nose bridge. God, my mom and I made 15 of those. And I was already
Wow.
sick of it. I was just like, I don't know if I can do another one. Walking through all of the different patterns that are available online was a lot. That was because there's tons of patterns flying around, which is really cool, but at the same time very confusing. So
Yeah, it's overwhelming, and you're like, which one's gonna fit comfortably for me or for other people? Because everybody's got. I know a lot of people like it's sensitive to hold it behind your ears. Like I saw something advertised where they're cutting out this. It's like a jagged little piece, so you can hook the elastic to the piece instead of on your ears, like around your head. So it's kind of a little more comfortable. So that's cool.
I've seen 2 different kinds of those where it's a full like elastic sportswear headband that goes all the way around your head, and then they've sewn buttons on either side towards the back of your ears to loop the ear loops, like the ones that I have around the buttons instead of around your ears. And then I've also seen crocheted or knitted bands that are maybe like 1 inch, 2 inches high, and then a couple inches long with several buttons on it so you can adjust it. And you would loop the loops on the mask around the buttons instead of around your ears. And then it would go around the back of your neck, which I thought was really cool. Those I can whip up really fast. I thought about doing some of those too, but
I just struggle with the eyeglasses getting fogged up.
Yeah, that's what I have a hard time with.
I went for a walk, and so then walking into the store, I went to Office Depot. I ordered some stuff online. They had it ready, and instead of driving there, I was like, I'm just gonna make this my walk. And so already the glasses are cold, and I walk in, they fog up, and then I have this thing on, and it's like, I can't see anyone. I just need my order.
I have a tip for that actually. I read an article at one point online that was talking about put a piece of Kleenex over your nose so that the Kleenex kind of underneath the mask between your face and the mask, so that it kind of works as a buffer for the moisture in your breath.
Okay.
And then the other thing that I found is the mask that I have has a little bit of a gap at the bottom where my chin is, because it's longer than my chin. And if I breathe down, this feels so weird with having a mask on. If I breathe down, it doesn't fog my glasses up as much. But it's also remembering of like, I'm making a funny face under a mask, trying to breathe correctly. Nobody can see me, but I think people can see me, and I don't want to be like weird, facial expression trying to breathe without fogging up my glasses. But
I read that you can wash your glasses with, I haven't tried it, but with dish soap or something. There's ways to sort of put an anti-fog film on your glasses, but I'm not sure how effective.
Try that. Yeah, I'm not sure how exactly that would work, but I'm gonna have to try that and see if that'll work.
Yeah, because I can't. I mean, mine get very fogged up.
It's gonna be a new challenge. I mean, even just trying to speak through the cloth, I couldn't totally understand what I was like, my last name, and so
yeah.
We have to find ways to speak more clearly. And maybe because the one I made, I just made a real simple thing. It took me probably not even 10 minutes, right? And it's kind of muffling. Like the ones you made that are more concave, maybe since it's more a little bit, there's a space, it's not pressed up against the face the same. It might be easier to speak with. I don't know.
It's a little easier to speak with. It's still kind of hard to hear me because it's 3 layers of very thick quilting cotton, which is what's been recommended by a lot of experts. And for these masks specifically, is that it's a tightly woven 100% cotton fabric.
That was a slight diversion, but that's okay.
No, that's okay. That's kind of what these things are for, slight diversions. So we've talked a lot about the things that we've done in the past. What are some of you guys' crafting goals? Of things that you've wanted to learn, or things that you've wanted to do that haven't happened yet, or things that you foresee down the line?
Embroidery. I always want to, I was going to come to an embroidery night, at the library. I always talk about wanting to learn it. And then I think what stops me is for me right now, that's a whole, not tons, but it's bringing in more craft supplies. And in the past, sometimes you get so enthusiastic about something, you get everything you need, and then you're like, so that kind of stops me. I don't even know where to start, Yeah. So, but it's like always been on my list of wanting to do it. And I see so much embroidery that I love, like
Mhm.
in so many different ways. So that's a big one for me.
Yeah, that's I hesitated getting into like proper embroidery for a long time for the same reason of I had a tendency when I first started embroidering of I'm just going to buy a ton of supplies, and then I had this idea in the back of my head of like I'm going to use these, but at the same time I know unconsciously there's a very strong possibility that I'll never use any of this again, and it seemed like a waste of money. So when I started crafting heavily again, once I got out of college, it was just like having to temper my excited response of I want all of the things right now to just get the basics and just get the cheapest stuff, and then see if you like it, and then kind of get into it from there. So I just got like a single embroidery hoop for like $1.80, a fat quarter of fabric, and 3 colors of floss, and that's all I started with. And then kind of went from there. And that was why I wanted to start the embroidery lab so much, was because I kept hearing from my friends and coworkers and people around me of like, I want to learn how to embroider, but it's so daunting. And I'm like, no, but it's so easy. And it's so, because Lucy, you already have needlepoint skills.
Yeah.
If you already know how to handle a needle and thread, you're already a leg up, and it'll help a lot. Plus I think there's kind of like this idea that embroidery is more restrictive than it really is, that it's not there's rules to it, and there's only one way to do it. But I'm seeing a lot more with like artists that I follow online that are very much of the contemporary embroidery mindset, that you make your own rules. There's no guidance to this at all. You can do whatever the hell you want, but it's still like a time thing for me of having to set aside the time of, can I actually, do I want to set aside the time for me to learn this, which is much, much harder. So.
I know, and it's like, yeah, take the time to learn something or be pulled back into just that relaxing craft that you already know how to do, so I struggle with that.
Yeah, and that's, I struggle with reminding myself that there's always time, because the biggest thing that I want to learn is how to spin yarn. And I got, when the library was doing a property disposition sale, I got one of the old spinning wheels that was in the collection, and I've had it for 2.5 years and I've never touched it. So it's kind of within the last 3 months of looking at that spinning wheel every day and being like, maybe I should try giving this to somebody who I know already spins, or donating it to like Spinner's Flock, which is a spinning guild out of Chelsea, to see if they can use this for their students or some of their demo nights. Because with everything that I'm working on, I can't see myself actually setting aside the time to learn it. It's just not a priority right now. And I know that there's resources here in Ann Arbor, like the library, where I can check a spinning wheel out if I ever have that impetus that like I really want to learn. So.
Oh, just keep it. It's like my potter's wheel. I've had it. I haven't been using it forever. I'm like, there's so many times I thought about, oh, I could sell it, get a few $100 for it. And it's just, but it's one of those things, now that I have it, I don't ever want to have to try and get it again, so.
That's the thing that's kept me from unloading it or getting rid of it in any way, is because a spinning wheel brand new, there's only really 2 or 3 companies. It's a $450 to $500 expense to buy a even beginner spinning wheel. So getting this one for 1/8 of that price, was even less than that. It was out of this world, and there was no way that I was going to turn that down. Just on the chance that, I would do it sometime in the future, because it was worth the $20 at the time. But I don't have any room in my apartment anymore.
Well, I was lucky when I my mom gave me all her, can't find where it is in my room right now, but I have one of those big like plastic suitcase things that you can keep embroidery floss in. So I mean, it has like, hundreds and hundreds of different colors of floss, and it was all wound on bobbins, and it was all labeled with the number of like the color and everything. So that allowed me a lot of freedom to play with embroidery. But it's like, I have a couple projects. I was going to sew a patch for a jean jacket, and I got halfway through, and then it's like, oh, there's decisions to be made, and I got distracted, and now I don't really think the jacket fits that comfortably. So it's like, what do I do with that? But I would like to still finish that. So I guess it's one of my crafting goals, would be to finish that. Embroidery's nice. Yeah. It's addictive once you get into it.
It
But then
is.
it's so easy to get distracted from it and like leave it, you know.
Because it's time consuming with any hand sewing. For me, it's the setting aside time, and I've gotten a lot better of, you know, just spending 10 or 15 minutes on my breaks at work or part of my lunches to, you know, just churn out a little bit of the work, and it gets done a lot faster doing it that way than it would be if I'm only working on it at home. But like I ran into the same thing of I started this jacket project where I hand embroidered this 8x10 unicorn patch. It took me 2 years. I finished it. I put it on the jacket. And then I was like, well, the jacket's a little bit too light of denim and I don't really like that. And I can't figure out a good way to get the patches that I have finished that I want on it. So I love it and it's beautiful the way that it is, but it's not quite what I envisioned when I started the project because it was a 2.5-year long process. And I've wanted to learn more woodworking type stuff and actual building. So shelves and desks and, you know, more heavy power tool carpentry type things. I've wanted to try a lot more of that, but then again, for me, it's a space thing and a materials. Like I can get the lumber, but I don't have any of the hand tools to do it. My dad has some here in Ann Arbor, so we've been talking for a long time about getting together and working on those kind of things.
I have to say, I did make some notes, and I had to write down that, you know, finishing other projects is not on my list of craft goals. Like you think they would be. I think at one point they were. I was like, oh, I'm going to finish these things, right? But now I'm like, no, I want to, you know, I was telling you, I think it was earlier this week that like I fell down a rabbit hole of the mandala dot painting.
You did, yeah.
And I'm like, so that's kind of in the back of my focus. But then I started working instead on some other, hopefully future programming for AEDL TV. So I fell down the rabbit hole of circular weaving. So like weaving in an actual like circle.
Yep.
So I'm trying to figure that out. And I did do it on an embroidery. I just only started on an embroidery hoop, but I think I have way too many warp threads.
No, you don't.
I don't know. It's okay. I could have less.
Yeah.
For, you know, so anyway.
The only thing with circular weaving that I've noticed is that the more threads you have, the bigger the disc in the center of your embroidery is going to be for the warp threads. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not something you can use as like a coaster, but that's okay. It can be a wall hanging. So yeah, like I've mentioned Sashiko a few times. I don't know when I'm going to get into that at this point. But Bargello, I think is how you say it.
Yes.
That always like, I just love looking at it. And I'm like, well, I should really just to get to play with so many colors and patterns and designs. And it also looks really complicated and overwhelming. So I'm like a little bit, that's like a definite long-term goal, but I think that would be really something I want to do someday.
Yeah. That, I don't know if it's Bargello or Bargello, but for folks that aren't familiar with that, it's a form of needlepoint that deals in specific patterns and color work within those patterns, or at least that's my best understanding of Bargello.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, and it's really graphic and really not graphic in like explicit, but graphic in like graphic arts. And it's really, a lot of the pieces that I've seen have been such awesome color work and just really, really gorgeous color interplay. I first saw that through the Royal School of Needlework that runs out of Hampton Court in England. And there was an artist there that wrote a book about 3D embroidered gardens.
Oh yeah.
And I think I've showed this to both of you, but it was something for a long time of like, I want to do that. And it was 3-dimensional embroideries called stump work and canvas work, which is Bargello is a form of canvas work that's more needlepoint oriented, to make these gorgeous elaborate gardens that look so realistic. That's still a long-term goal for me, is to do one of those embroidered gardens. Now that we've gone over goals, have you guys had any huge disasters? We talked about this a little bit outside of video, of the things that have gone wrong for us over the course of time. But I had one recently that talked a little bit about these needle minder cases, that it's fabric and a zipper, and then the inside has loops of ribbon. You needed a place to put all of them in one place. And I saw this on somebody else's YouTube, page, and I was like, I'm gonna try that for myself to see if I can do it. And I managed to figure it out, and I did one where it was not quite as sturdy as this one. I didn't use enough interfacing. So I was like, oh, I'll do another one. And then this one that I did, the zipper's on it backwards because when I went to go close it, this is supposed to be the outside. It closes so that the inside is on the outside.
Whoa.
So it's inside out. So I have to take it apart and reset the zipper and then resew the whole thing, when I spent a good deal of time just swearing and cursing and yelling at my sewing machine when I was trying to get the zipper in there in the first place. I realized that after I got done with it, and I was like, okay, I'm done with it. I'm ready to finish it. And then I kind of wanted to just like cry. But that kind of stuff happens to me a lot because I kind of fly into things fully trusting my skills as a crafter of like, I'll figure it out as I go. It'll totally be fine. Sometimes that goes really well, and sometimes that blows up in my face. And then I kind of have to figure out where I went wrong and troubleshoot it from there and take it as like, how did I do this? What did I do wrong? And how do I fix it? But that on varying days can be really a fun kind of puzzle. And then on other days, it can be just like, I don't want to touch this at all.
Yeah, I think a lot of my disasters would be on the sewing machine, the same kind of thing, where I think what keeps me from being really good at sewing is like on a machine is the patience and like taking the time ahead of time to completely measure everything and think about that and pin stuff. And then, so you end up like with things facing the wrong way or zipper in backwards. And then you've spent so much time on it, as you said, to like go in, rip out all those stitches, redo it. And also the thing about sewing where I think it's easy to have disasters as opposed to like knitting, you might drop some stitches, you might have to tear out a whole sweater, but you still have your yarn. It's like with sewing, you've made a commitment once you cut a piece of fabric. So if you know, and I think that, I mean, I can't even think of specific examples, but I know there have been times where I'm like, oh, I can't believe I did that. And
that's, that saying of like measure twice, cut once. I can still measure twice, cut once and still totally screw it up. Like that to me has never helped me at all because it's just like, no, I'm still going to mess it up. Like it'll be fine. I hope, maybe. There's been several situations where I've cut stuff wrong of like, there is no way to fix it. This project, having that band in the middle, was I cut the outside piece the wrong size. That was not supposed to be there. I had to add that in later to make it the right size to match the inside. So it was like, again, you know, that's me trying to problem solve of like, how do I fix the things that I flew in half cocked on to try to fix it. But and that's the biggest thing with the sewing machine for me is knowing when the sewing machine is malfunctioning and when it's my error. Because my sewing machine recently started doing a thing where the thread jumps out of where it's supposed to be. So it unthreads itself on the inside of the machine where I can't see it. And then all of a sudden the bobbin starts freaking out and doing weird stuff and snarling and the machine won't move. And I'm trying to fix the bobbin when I know that the bobbin is fine. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's still doing it. And through having to like Google the problem and do all this research, no, it's actually the top thread. And I wanted to throw my hands up and just be like, I never want to sew again. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Why is it totally the opposite of what I think it would be? But once I understood that, it kind of made it a little bit easier to go forward and why my sewing machine was being so temperamental. So it's the machine uprising. That's my sewing machine.
Sometimes I think I choose to just hand sew something when I'm like, and I'll be doing it like the hem of a pant, and I'm just like, you know, you could just zip this through on the sewing machine, but I'm like, I just don't want to get involved. I just feel like some days it's like, maybe no machines is best.
There's some projects,
I think the other thing, and I was thinking about this when you had proposed talking about disasters, is that like, I was trying to look at why crafting disasters happen for me, and specifically with sewing, it comes about, I think, because you have to have a space. Like I work better if I have a space that's designated for that, so you can walk away from something, leaving it as it is, and then come back when you have the patience to do it again. But it's hard to find that space. That's the thing. So
Yeah.
if you have to like whip up, get your sewing machine set up, try to work on it, have this whole fight with it, sew a zipper backwards. It's just like you want to throw up your hands and walk away.
You do. And I fully understand why, because I run some of the sewing labs at the library. I fully understand why there are some folks that walk into sewing lab with a predisposition in their head of like, this is going to be horrible. I'm going to hate this. It's going to be awful. It's going to be hard, because they've had so many bad experiences with, you have to get the sewing machine out, you have to get it set up, and then you have to cut everything out. It's a big process. And I'm lucky enough to have set aside a space so that I can leave everything set up. And I think that that's made me a better sewer, is to have that space.
Absolutely.
But they're trying to convince folks of like, no, this is a process, that it is something that you do have to work at. And it's a patience game for me, of like, how long is my patience going to last for me to actually be able to fully do something start to finish. So a lot of like knitting and crochet gets that idea of like, it's a big commitment to do a big project, when sometimes I think sewing is almost, it's as big of a commitment, even though it goes faster. Because
the other, like, knitting and crochet are portable too. And so like, you don't have to have always the space where you can do it. You can keep it in a bag, you can move it around. That makes a big difference.
It does.
I couldn't come up with too many disasters. I'm that good. No.
You haven't had any pottery explode in the kiln? You haven't had that?
I haven't had that. I mean, there were pottery disasters where, like, I don't, I think you just forget about it, or
that could be it too.
Yeah. At the time though, and I this made me miserable. I remember like just leaving the pottery studio and just being like so frustrated and just like in tears. I'm like, I am failed. Like, clay is not my path. It's totally against me, because I had this batch of clay I made that was just like, I'd be throwing, it felt really great, and all of a sudden it would just start like tearing. I'm like, why is this like I don't have too much grit in it? Like, I couldn't figure it out. It was like the same recipe I used. Like, I just kept trying to figure out what was going on with this batch of clay. And I don't remember how I think I just ended up putting it in the reprocess bin and just like starting over again and making another batch. But it was just like, oh my God, this is so aggravating. This clay is like, it's what we call being very short. Like, it had no plasticity to it. It was just like, so I remember that was rough. Like, when your materials just seem to be against you. And I mean, there's times where like trying to make like a fountain and just engineering things like that, or lamps and like that kind of thing. That there was some disasters there, but fortunately, like anything I did as a wall hanging was always really well secured, and had a really excellent lab tech in our lab. She's my clay mother, is what I would, because I could just bring her anything. Be like, what am I doing? I want to do this thing. How do I make it happen? And she just like knew. And Sandy, she was amazing. So I learned so much from her. So but I mean, I've had some disasters in the fiber arts, and like there was the one, what do you call that sweater I made? Like the shrug shawl.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And I'm winging it. I'm just going for it, and it came out okay, but I never ended up wearing it because it's a shrug, and I don't like how it lays.
Yep.
I want it more over. It's so like stretchy and bouncy that it never stays. And then I should have left the sleeves at 3/4, because then I was like, no, I'm gonna extend the sleeves, and I got really crafty, and I was so impressed with how I made it full sleeve, and I would wear it. I'm like, I'm too hot. I need to push these sleeves up. I hate this. I'm like, so now I'm keep thinking like, should I just go through and like take that part out? Because it was an add-on. I could, but it's like black yarn.
Yep.
That would be hard.
That would be hard.
But I'm tempted, because so that was a slight disaster. And then I had that gray shawl that I just I was knitting, and I was so close. I was probably like not even third or less done. And there was just this one line where there was like total goof in it. And also I realized I was knitting kind of backwards the way I was doing the wrapping. So I was knitting it tighter than it needed to be. So I just took the whole thing apart, and I'm going to start it again.
Yeah.
That Bella shawl, it'll come. But I was just like, I have to have it be right. I'm not going to be able to live with it. If I finish it, then I'm just going to like never want to, use it. So
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have
So
some really, go ahead,
oh,
Lucy.
I was gonna say, I have actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I knit 2 sweaters to completion, and they're like, I don't think of them as disasters necessarily, but I never wear them ever. Like one I'd never put on for longer than like just trying it on, because I'm like, I don't like the way this looks. I'm not going to wear it. And the other one I've worn a couple times, but then I've been so hot, or it's just like it's a cardigan, but there's no closure, so it's just too drapey, and so it's like that kind of is a disaster, because I spent so much time doing it, and I guess I learned in doing it, and I learned a lot about the construction, but now they're just like, what do I do? Do I donate them? Do I?
Oh, I know. And some people say it's like so sad when they see somebody's handmade piece that they donated or whatever. It's like, sometimes this is a relief. Like I had somewhere for this thing to go, because I honestly just didn't want it. And there's nobody for me to give it to. And it's just like, somebody else can do something with it. Maybe you'll buy it and you'll take it apart and use the yarn for something else, or,
I actually really love seeing handmade stuff in thrift stores and antique fairs and, resale shops, because it's that idea of like giving it a new life. I see it less as throwing away and seeing more as like finding it a good home with somebody who's going to value it and somebody who's going to love it for what it is. And I think that's because I look for those kind of things in resale shops, and especially at antique fairs. I look for half finished, like in the 50s and 60s, there were a lot of mail order embroidery projects that were like the design would come stamped on the fabric, and they would send you like a needle and thread. I look for those. I love them. I think they're great, and that's a part of like American history that I really think is cool. I look for those everywhere, and I find them all the time. I don't always buy them, but some of them, yeah. And I have people that'll, like my mom, my grandma, my aunt had these. Do you want these? So I've adopted some from other people, and it's so cool to find those. So I really like it. It is, in some regards, it's kind of, I have this thought in the back of my head of like some of the stuff that I've made, what's going to happen to that when I don't want it anymore? Like, what am I going to do? I did a huge embroidery piece that's hanging on the wall above me. It's like 17 by 24. It's an embroidered map of a fantasy realm by an author, Tamora Pierce, of her Tortall universe. And that was my first huge embroidery project, and I love it, and it's one of my favorite things, but there may be a point at some point where I want to get rid of it. What am I going to do with that? And, the thought of, like, there's a story behind every single one of those pieces. And I'm not always going to know that story, but, like, I always want to know that story of where did this come from, who made it, who did they make it for? Like, I think that's really cool. So, yeah, no, I think that's everything that we wanted to cover. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Heidi and Lucy, for being in on this conversation today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Let us know if there's a topic that you want us to talk about, or something that you want to hear about, or questions that you have in the comment section down below. And we'll be there to answer your questions. In the meantime, we'll see you guys next week. Stay healthy and don't forget to love each other. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.